Guess we're back here, right?
Yeah, right. Literally right back to where we started, right? And again, we wanted to come back and show this because David, like you and I have talked, it really does show the progression, right? What does a headcount growth look like? What do those inflection points look like? Talking through the contractor model, right? You can see that when we were talking through, the stage 3, you're at about 50 and trying to get to stage 4 at 150, it's a little bit different animal than going from a stage 4 to a stage 5, right? Going from 150 to 500 is an entirely different thing. Moving from a stage 5 to a stage 6 is an entirely different thing. But the same thought processes are there. It is still a very repeatable process. But it is all about finding, who are the right people for the right seats at the right time and knowing what the right time is and that you've got the right seats defined.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I was working with the client the other day and they said, well, yeah, we have job roles for everybody. And I said, okay, so what are the outcomes of those roles? Well, 80% of it is as assigned by manager. And I'm like, okay, well, here we go, so now we're literally going to peel that back and go, okay, let's look at the organization, let's look at their structure, let's look at the job roles that go with that and at least start from there. Do we even have the right seats on this bus? So, yeah, we're backing it up a bit. But it is about the head count, but it's about having the appropriate head count in the right seat at the right time. So,
That's you framed that perfectly or set that up. I'm intentional or not, you're brilliant. But so yeah, at the 150-ish size at that stage 4 in there, you're building some functional area leadership capability capacity, and that's exactly what you said. You're trying to define. A lot of that is
yeah,
defining the outcomes that you need from those roles. And I was coaching this guy the other morning, and it was so funny because I'm like trying to help him develop, what's his role. I mean, the company's evolving, and he's trying to go define his role, and he's his boss will call his boss Sam to protect the guilty, and I'm like, look, helping Sam is not a job description. you
yeah,
know Doing what Sam wants is not a job description. Like, what are the specific things you do, right? And so you kind of evolve these job descriptions, and what that'll be definitely a future topic. You evolve it from the list of the things you do to a list of the 3 or 5 outcomes that you were
right,
responsible for, and then that evolves into, by the time you're in stage 5, here's the system, here's very specifically how you achieve those outcomes, and then here's how those things all relate to each other. So stage 5 is about integrating the very specific outcomes for the roles with the how that's done from a process, a tool standpoint that's standardized across the organization. And it's never 100% perfect, but it is, you're always progressing in that
yeah,
direction.
yep,
So
yep.
yep. So here we are. It's never easy, but every stage is beautiful and fun.
It is. It is. It's an awesome journey in a great industry. So we wouldn't be here if we didn't love it.
Exactly. So now here's the well, I was going to say the $1 million question. In contracting, $1 million is almost nothing these days. So here's the multi-million dollar question: is, okay, I see the machine, and I almost look at this as two types of leaders. Like, either you're a serious optimist, which I think you have to be an optimist in order to be a contractor, because a pessimist would never ever start a contracting business. So you're either walking out and you're looking at everything thinking, everything's pretty good. We're doing pretty good, because I mean, obviously you're still standing, or you've grown around and you look around and you see 8,000 problems. So neither one of those is super, super effective, because, one, there's always something to be improved and on the machine, including preparing for that next stage of growth. And the second one, even if you see 1,000 problems, and I'm just speaking from my personal experience, one of the things that made me super good at field leadership level, like a superintendent level, and at a project management level, was I can walk a project, and I had this great mentor, Mark, who showed me how to walk and see at this excruciating level of detail everything that's wrong on the project, everything that's out of place, everything from this could be cleaned up a little bit more, these tools could be organized a little bit more, this safety thing over here, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, a list where I could, when I think it was 1996, 97. And I remember I had a pretty short list of what I thought was the punch list for the project. And he walked, and he's a good like 8 inches taller than me. He's like 6.5 feet tall. And so he's walking. I'm pretty much jogging to go keep up with him and everything. And in a matter of 45 minutes, he has this 8-page detailed list of everything that he saw on the job. And he didn't say much. He went into the job site trailer, then ripped the pages out of his notepad, laid them on the copy machine, made a copy of them, handed me the copy, and said, "I'll see you next week." So, and that level of attention to detail, I learned from that, and that made me really, really good at building projects, because if you get a project 99.9% perfect, you have a punch list a mile long and an upset customer. So that's something that you have to be very good at building a project. Now you move into operations management, you shift, and so it's not about prioritizing how to get everything done. Your leadership shift is prioritizing what should get done, because you will never have all the resources required in the business to attack all improvements all at once. So it's, how do you really effectively resource all the competing, priorities? That's a subject for you and I to talk about in the future, because that's where we spend a lot of time. In the meantime, I think one of the helpful, and we're not targeting this and saying award to start is the one. It's saying, look at your whole model and ask this question that is from the 4 disciplines of execution, that says, if every other area of our operation remained at its current level of performance, warts and all, problems, inefficiencies, just ignore it, put blinders on. What's the one area that you would change within the organization that will have the greatest impact? And think about that impact in terms of changing your contractor scoreboard over the next, 2 to 5 years in the future. Maybe 1 to 5 years in the future. Email us, and we'll have some contact information at the end. But we have a learning guide tied to this book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. There's this book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's based on a general, a lot of management principles going back to the 50s of management by objectives and key results. It's been called a lot of different things over time. But it's really about priority, how you prioritize. We have found that the language in this book appeals to, I don't think so we've had any contractor we worked with where there wasn't at least a few people that are like, I love that book.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always, everybody gets at least a little piece of knowledge out of it.
Yeah. So anyways, it's well written. It's building up on I think at the time this book was written, I want to say the 2010s or so, it was built upon 60 years of a kind of codified body of knowledge of how to look across a broader organization and figure out what the priorities are for improvement. We built the kind of contractor's business model as a way to visualize some of the big blocks of the organization and help at least narrow in on what that is, or else you run around. Like my mistake moving from project level management to general management was I was trying to punch list the business, and I was overstressing my team. I was really good at it. I could run around and look at everything, and I would stay late. I was single. I didn't have any kids. It was like fantastic. So after the business kind of stopped at 5 or 6 p.m. and everything, I would stay for an extra couple hours, and I would write up long lists for everybody that worked for me to go do. And then
I think we were all that person at one time.
just to make absolutely certain that they didn't get buried in any of your other emails, I would actually go around and print the things out and sit it on their chairs so that they actually had to physically move the list. It does it did it drive some improvements? Absolutely. Did it create a whole lot of stress that was unnecessary? Yes, because I didn't have at that time. I didn't recognize that it was about focusing on the priorities and then which levers are going to have the biggest impact. So I could have done a whole lot better job rather than kind of spread around the resources that were under my leadership. Instead of spreading those around for all these kind of smaller improvements all across the organization, I would have, looking back, I would have done much better had I been able to concentrate. So that's, if you take away anything from this, that's what we've been talking about for the last couple hours. So moving, that was easy. So moving to the last couple things. Levels of strategy, and we talked about strategy really coming heavily into play. I mean, there's strategy at all levels, right? And this is there, but your first strategy is I need to find a customer that's going to pay for something. But as you kind of evolve into stage 5, stage 6, strategy also gets thrown around and misused a lot. It's not one general word. And so we're going to try and break it down a little bit. There's the company level strategy. What's the purpose of the company? Why do we exist? And where are we heading? What does it look like when we get there? How will we get there, including our operational, our behavioral boundaries, right? Those are the big strategic things at the company level. And then you start breaking it down to individual markets, like, so you touched on it, like, the industrial division and things like that. And that's where you're starting to say, which industry sectors are we going after, which geographies, maybe which scopes of work or products. Yes, some contractors manufacture and sell products that support their operations. Some contractors align strategies around different delivery methods. Like they will only, use integrated, project delivery methods, or CM at risk, or something, or design build. And then what's our strategy around particular customers, and what's our strategy even around particular projects as you get into larger, more complex projects. So there's, and those strategies at the we kind of call the market level all have to integrate with the company's overall strategy, and including the operational boundaries. And then you've got the, we'll call it the kind of the operational excellence level of strategies. That's all the things that are in the contractor's primary value stream, the project value stream, as well as all the supporting operations. And that's saying, like, okay, what functional area capabilities, functional area could be procurement, functional area could be fabrication, it could be project execution. But what are those capabilities and capacities do we really need to win within those markets? What's going to differentiate us? If somebody says on time and on budget, I promise that's the absence of a strategy, and that's the absence of thought. That's the prerequisite. So there's, because your competitor is never going to show up and say, yeah, you know what, I'm constantly over budget, and yeah, we're always behind schedule. Quality is a little shaky too. Quality is truly a little shaky. Not going to lie to you at all. So you can't say I'm on time and I'm on budget. We go, so throw away the fortune cookie thing. Strategies are not fortune cookie sayings. So that's the operational, capabilities that are going to differentiate you in that market. And they do change by market. The organizational development is the strategies of saying, what's the talent? What do we need? How are we going to execute our operations, not to both today and into the near future. So with that, so I know talent value stream was your very critical and brilliant add to this whole process. And that's probably the subject of what we're going to talk about next. You want to give us a highlight reel?
Well, so just like we've been, talking a little bit about it, right, is the strategy is great. Having all the markets is great. Having all of this stuff is great, but you still need talent, right? You need the right people in the right seats at the right time to do all of this. They've got to be the right level of thinker, all of those types of things that really fill in.
Right.
And it is kind of depending on where you are, right? It is the whole, what are our talent needs, right? What are we going to need? And again, our level 1, 2, 3 might be, well, what are we going to need, this week, next month, right? We're not out too far. Uh, we've talked a little bit about the recruit to hire, right? How many are we going to get and where are we going to get them from? What are we going to do to bring them on board? How do we fit them into our culture? How do we train them for the things we want? What's the development of them? How do we keep these people, and what does that cycle look like? David, we talked about this the other day, right? We were laughing about training, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, when people come in, we have to train them." Well, yeah, but chances are you get into some of these big companies and you're still training the CEO how to use their new phone, right?
Right.
There's training everywhere. There's professional development everywhere, right? Because professional development, again, is the depth of the role that you're in. Somebody's in a role and they love it and they're good at it. Just keep training them, keep developing them deeper into that. Again, leadership training, the trajectory of where others could go or where people can move up into the organization. And then the offboarding. How do we have that instead of the cliff? How do we have that slide? How do we help people move from fully employed towards something different? What does that look like? Or even, again, from one job to the other. And all of these fit inside really where the organization is at the time. We've got the stage ones. And actually, David, I think the next slide's got a pretty good picture of kind of what we're talking about here.
Oh, you
When
mean as the management teams develop?
Yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah.
did you want to,
Yeah, we can. That would actually be perfect.
yeah, so talking about this, right? That the management team, right? If we're going to look more specifically at that, really organizations and their teams go through these processes, right? There's the emerging team. That emerging is really kind of, let's face it, kind of head down, butt up. They're just working through the work. They see the work in front of them. They're just dealing with it, moving it to the side, and moving on to the next one. So it's pretty shallow, right? The org structure is very very shallow. Not much height to it. There's probably maybe two layers in there because they're doing all the work, right? They're
Right.
just doing all the work. You move up into the hollow organization, and now you can see that, okay, you probably have that, maybe that leader or a couple of those leaders that really see kind of where they want to take this and where this could go to. But you've got the rest of the organization who's, kind of acting like emerging. They've got their head down. They're working to get the work done. But there's really that whole middle layer is missing. There's one person that can't possibly manage all of the people that are
Right.
doing the work. So we've got the hollow because that middle layer is just gone. Now, what can happen is, of course, you're in the midst of growth, and so therefore the middle layer maybe hasn't been uh, developed yet, right? You're still trying to figure out who those people are and kind of how you're going to fill in that structure. It could also get to be that you've moved to, and we'll talk about this ready stack next, right? We've got a full stack of people. You've got your head down people that are really getting the work done. You've got the next layers of management, whether you're scaling across geographies and markets and all that, and you've got these nice little stacks in two or three places, or whether you're kind of that stage 4, stage 5 company where you've got the full complement of
Right.
people to run the business you're in. But you've got that leader, you've got the management layer in between, or maybe a couple, depending on the size of the organization. The interesting part happens to me is when you're in this ready full stack, if your leaders at the top are not really paying attention, back to that talent value stream, if they're not paying attention to the professional development and leadership development of the people right below them, suddenly what happens, right? I mean, David, you see it all the time. Those people will leave. They're
Right.
going to go start their own company. They're going to go to work for some other company. And now what happens? You've now become a hollow company again, because
Right.
your middle level is empty or partially empty, right? So you've got again, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. If you're not paying attention to everybody there, and certainly in that talent value stream, in the retention cycle, you're going to go from, ready back to hollow, and very possibly almost back to emerging if you don't have enough, and you've got to move back down into those roles and kind of head down and getting the work done. So yeah.
And you're describing that at, because and you're working backwards in the same stage that you're at. I mean,
Yes.
never mind growth, because
Yeah.
yeah, I was thinking about that in terms of, and there's a huge difference. Age has something to do with it, because sooner or later, age will take us all out of the game. I
Yeah.
mean, no matter how you look at it, none of us will win that fight overall. And so we have two contractors that I would say are both described as extremely hollow. But one of them, the leader that's there, is in their mid 40s, so they have time to work through the hollowness. Now, whether they will or won't, to be determined. Whether they can or can't, to be determined. But either way, they have time on their side. Another one is very much on that same side, and everybody's in their late 60s to early 70s.
Yep.
That's a whole different problem to go work through.
Yeah.
And it's just a challenge. It's not anybody's fault. Just we happen to be here, and that's what we work through. So in terms of the management team, so that you just teed this up perfectly. This is what has to be evaluated. So if you're looking at this, it's easy to do on your own. Almost like start step one, evaluate generally what stage of growth you're at, based roughly on your 2-month peak headcount, like we talked about last time. Adjust it for the complexity of the business. For instance, we have contractors that are, maybe size wise a stage 3 or a stage 4, and yet they have a full stack of engineering services and fabrication and things like that, just because of the market that they happen to be in and what they serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a lot more of a complex business. There's a lot more handoffs. There's a lot more interactions and everything that have to happen. We also have contractors that are in the 5, 6, 700 person range that serve a single rapidly growing market, and so the complexity of the business requirement is just far less. So you have to kind of make some adjustments for the complexity of the business and how you're looking at that model. But in any case, headcount definitely plays a role, and complexity is an adjustment factor, maybe up one, down one. Then look at your growth history over the last 3 years and your growth trajectory over the next 3 years. So, for instance, if you've grown really rapidly over the last 3 years, you are most likely your management team, the state of it is probably somewhere between hollow, emerging to hollow.
Yeah.
And that's just the condition of you've been growing really fast over the last 3 years. If you haven't been growing really fast over the last 3 years, and your state is emergent or hollow for the stage that you're at, that's probably, you look at that as a slightly different challenge. And then look forward and say, what are we preparing for in the future? Are we what do I want in the future? And really take a hard look at it. Because if you're emerging into a current stage of growth and you have lots of growth planned over the next 3 years, that's going to be a really, really hard road. And just know that and it may not even be a possible road. And then look at your outcomes. I mean, that's a fair statement. I mean, that outcomes don't tell the whole story, but look at the trends, look at the outcomes compared to industry benchmarks, at least as a starting point. It's important to get context to those things, though, and not to misinterpret. Like for instance, the other day, somebody asked me, they're like, they were looking at some of the industry benchmarks, and they looked over and they noticed, they're like, well, commercial general contractors seem to have really low overhead. Well, that's the wrong number to actually look at. You can't compare the overhead of a commercial general contractor to a civil contractor. It's just not even the same. It's just dumb to make that comparison. But unfortunately, without the context, it's hard to look at. I'm like, yeah, they also don't have a $50 million fleet. So, and then 5 is evaluate your strategies, really ensuring, and we'll go, this will be a future topic of conversation, strategy, but ensuring that one, you have a few market strategies that are diversified enough for stability of growth in the long term, meaning that there's cycles in the economy. So federal spending might be up, while other spending is down, and those things go up and down. And so once you get into stage 5, stage 6, you're looking for the very long term. So you're not trying to get the beige paint, but you are trying to get to 2 or 3 markets that are counter-cyclical to each other, that provide some reasonable stability and growth over the long term. And yet they're focused enough where you can get some of the economies of scale that you've earned by being at that size. And then 6 is evaluate the current state of your management team. Everything that you just described of where's your team at, and knowing that can change almost, one retirement, one acquisition, or one person leaving the company can totally change things. Also, one person coming into the organization can dramatically change things, so good or bad. So by the way, but really, evaluate that current state. And it's only once you put 1 through 6 and you kind of understand where you're at, that you can start to really get back and build that prioritized improvement development roadmap. And that literally looks like a roadmap of where you're going to drive to, not the specifics of how you're going to drive, and know that you have to come back and reevaluate that on a regular basis. So hopefully that makes a little sense. I don't know, Sue, how did I do on describing that?
No, I think that's great. It's it really does. Yeah, it really does matter about how all of these pieces fit together, right? Any one is great, but just like the 7 things on the side, you look at it in the more holistic approach. There's just so much more to gain. Again, looking at your company history, looking at the growth history, evaluating strategies, looking at it as the pieces of the whole really does, in my mind, help to just bring better answers to the forefront, right? So that's the way I'd look at it.
And that's a great way of describing it. I think it's important to look at it. There's not a right or a wrong. Every
Yeah.
business, every career, every life, every
Yep.
project is precious and unique, and it has problems and it has successes, and all of those things. And it's looking at them all together, and it's just trying to, in my mind, get better every day,
Yep.
better on all dimensions. So last couple things, and then we'll call it a morning. We'll get on with the rest of our day. But so this, everything we talked about, to me comes back to, almost like what, like I call the 100x contractor. And it's if this is brings us back to that quote from Elon Musk. But building a construction project, super, super hard. But building a contracting business that consistently delivers projects is 10 times harder. And consistently meaning, the outcomes are the same. If we estimated the job to have 17% margin in it, when we complete the job, it has somewhere between 16.5 and 17.5% margin in it. If we're trying to build it with consistent quality, with consistent safety, and you're looking for that consistency, that's 10 times harder. The real magic, though, that comes to sustainability, that starts to happen between stages 5 and 6, is building that contracting business that consistently develops the people who continuously deliver more projects each year, while improving the safety, quality, and productivity. That's another 10 times harder. So that's the 100x contractor, and that's what makes the difference between the contractors that are over on the left side of the graph from average, when it comes to consistent outcomes over time, to the ones that help bring it down to the average. So if you're looking at the industry benchmarks and you're average, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm very average, but just know that there's another 10 or 15% of the contractors out there that are way, way, way above average. And that maybe is where you want to set your sights on for sustainability.